You can fit a thick fan on this. Why have you put a thin one? Am I the one that's insane here? Ladies and gentlemen, if you want the ultimate gaming PC in 2024, then we all know you got to build it yourself, right? Well, actually wrong, because inside this box is the brand new Corsair One with up to an RTX 4090 GPU, an i9 CPU, but then crucially, it's all custom water cooled, so you don't need to do anything yourself, yet you should have something that's very cool, quiet, and with gaming performance that's going to be perfect for those latest 4K 240Hz monitors. Let's find out if it's any good right after a short word from this video's sponsor. Deepcool's Mystique All-in-One is here, and it brings stunning looks, functionality, and performance. This epic new cooler packs a 2.8-inch IPS display, allowing you to see your CPU temperatures, speeds, and pump information, or, if you're a bit more flamboyant, playback images and GIFs to really make your PC stand out. The Mystique is perfect for both high-wattage Intel and AMD CPUs, with up to 360mm radiator sizes, performance static pressure fans, and Deepcool's awesome 5th generation water pump. Learn more today with the link down below. That's a really weird position. It was boxception, look. Box inside a box. There we go. That would have been better for the intro because you would have actually seen it. The Corsair One i500, and this does come in a couple of flavors and actually a couple of colors as well. And to me, this almost looks as if they're going for the whole like Mac Pro trash can sort of look here, but I actually always quite liked that. I know it upset like a load of enthusiasts, but the good thing about this is that there is upgradability as well. Obviously, it's not going to be anywhere near as good as like a proper desktop PC where you've got slots galore, and if you want to add in loads of extra like PCIe cards and things, obviously you can do that. But in this day and age, to be fair, not that many people actually do that. So for everyone else, this definitely is going to be of interest. So here we have, actually a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be, the new Corsair One. And for a gaming PC that, as I say, has pretty much, bar one thing that we discuss in a second, the ultimate specifications for gaming in 2024, I'm pretty impressed already, actually. If it can maintain great thermals and low noise while still delivering all of the performance that you'd expect from these components, then definitely, for the size, that is pretty impressive. I mean, for reference, this is the new 2500X enclosure from Corsair, and obviously this is micro ATX, so this is definitely not like a huge chassis. I mean, volume-wise, it's probably similar to like your traditional sort of tower, but this is meant to be a smaller rig. And when you compare it to the One, I mean, there's no contest. But as I mentioned earlier, this goes all the way up to an RTX 4090, and this one actually packs an RTX 4080 Super. So you've got two different variants and two different colors. Obviously, this is the black version, and it comes with this sort of like wood effect. When I say wood effect, it's real wood on the front. I thought, like with gentleman's attire, you should never mix brown with black. Is that true? Maybe I've been thinking wrong all my life, but this actually does work. I like that. I mean, a Fractal North, sorry to say, this is definitely not, but it's definitely a pretty neat and pretty cool looking PC that has a little bit of a difference there. And speaking of differences, there are a few to speak of between the 4080 Super and the 4090 version, other than the GPU itself. I mean, the main one is price, because this is £3,500 in the UK or $3,599 in the US for the 4080 Super version. But obviously a 4090 is more expensive, and you do also get double the RAM, because it goes from 32 gig to 64. And then something that I guess if you're a professional you'll appreciate, but gamers won't give a hoot at all, is that you also now get Windows 11 Pro on the more expensive version rather than Home that's on that. But of course this wouldn't be a PC-centric video without doing ourselves a proper teardown. So first things first, you have these side panels that are kind of like a nice fabric mesh, really like that. Definitely a bit more premium than what you get on your average gaming PC. These come off completely toollessly, but then you've got two screws on either side. Now the front is quite interesting because not only is this wood, but it's almost completely the opposite to the 2500 and 6500X, because these are not user replaceable. I mean, obviously you could take them apart if you want, but the reason for this is because you actually have this light bar and touch strip built into it itself. So this is a power button, the logo will light up, but then you've got RGB on the front as well, and you sort of customize this with this little touch sensitive bar on the top and on the bottom. So you can cycle through different effects, different colors. Move around the back and we have what looks like an MSI motherboard. My knowledge there, I can tell based on the paint, on the font, and the way it looks. But then we've got a Zotac GPU, so off-the-shelf components. Corsair didn't actually tell me not to break it. Usually people say, please don't drop it, or please don't touch this, but I've been given free rein, which as we know is potentially quite dangerous. All right, so two screws remove, and then this whole thing should just fold down. That's nice and easy. I wish they'd put that on their like main cases. That's so much easier than having that like hook system that you have to get into. That's quite annoying. Well, this is now completely different because these are Corsair's like thin, lower profile fans, but they look pretty smart here, don't they? And you can see we've got this hinge system here. So we have to unscrew a couple of screws and then this will like come out, it'll swing out. And of course I do say feel free to upgrade it, doesn't void your warranty as well, which is great. I should quickly show you the other side, which should remove in exactly the same way. And I think in the intro when I alluded to the fact that this might be similar to Corsair's ITX case, I completely take that back because this is nice, solid aluminium. Obviously a fair bit more premium than that case was, which is good. I didn't really like the Corsair ITX case that they like released a few months ago. Like it's fine, but it's almost a bit big and this is how I want it to feel. And it didn't feel like that, and it had quite a high price tag, which was a bit annoying. But if you do want to add a 2.5-inch SSD, you can see they've helpfully actually pre-routed the cable for you. You've got your SATA cable, and then somewhere in here, you've got a SATA power as well. I imagine if you do want to put like other SSDs and things in, like 2.5-inch drives, you could probably just stuff it somewhere if you can find the cables, but they're not officially upgradable, if that makes sense. But there is also an extra M.2 slot on this side, on the motherboard itself, if you do want to upgrade that. So let's remove these two screws, and then the whole thing should swing open. Okay, that's interesting. So in terms of water cooling, it's not actually as crazy as I would have thought. Why is that the case? Why have they not got a 240 radiator? It's only a 120. I mean, surely there's space here. That's a little bit baffling, actually. I'll turn this round so you can properly see inside, because I do want you to see that this is one of MSI's mag mortar motherboards by the look of it. And because it's micro ATX, it means you can actually upgrade the RAM really easily. So you could either swap these two sticks out, but you have 2 extra slots as well if you did want to make some upgrades. And they've actually left this top SSD bay empty, so you can put an SSD in here a lot easier. And when you think what they've managed to achieve actually, which is to have something as small as this with mostly off-the-shelf parts, that is pretty clever. But something that I was a little bit confused by, and I think is now starting to make sense, is the fact that this motherboard, despite the fact that the most expensive version costs almost £5,000, is only a B-series motherboard. This is not Z790, it's B760. Like, okay, that makes sense for gamers, right? But then you've got a 14900K in here, which is obviously an overclockable CPU, and if you want like the ultimate performance, especially in something that's water-cooled, you'd think that you would be able to like push it crazy far, but no, they've decided it only needs a 120 and to go for a B-series motherboard. But you could definitely fit an extra fan there. Even if you are going to go for a 120, why not put an extra fan here? I mean, there's literally a fan header here on the board if you did want to upgrade it. I'm almost certain you could fit that in. You've got so much space. Let's keep going though and have a look down the bottom. This is where our graphics card is. This comes out, obviously it is connected. It's not like a full cover. Obviously you've still got exposed VRMs and things, but you do have cooling from that fan that will go down into that chamber. And because it is separate, you've got this plate here that will sort of keep the air separate from the CPU to the GPU. Everything else here looks nice and neat and tidy. Most of the heat should be taken away from the GPU with this little pump that goes all the way up to the top, and then you've got your 240 radiator look at the top. So they've decided, probably quite rightfully, that it makes more sense to put a 240 for the graphics card rather than the CPU. But again, I'd like to see both personally. Down the bottom, you can see there is your SSD. If you did want to upgrade that, absolutely fine. Just obviously be aware you have to reinstall Windows. Right, keyboard, mouse, and of course the PC-centric mouse mat, available from pccentric.store or link down below. Let's get this thing turned on. Ooh, a little bit of a delay there. I was panicking, but no, we should be absolutely fine. So you do have 2 light strips down this side and then on the undersides as well. So almost like Need for Speed Underground 2. Shout out to that amazing game. Super quick to actually boot. Let's have a look at our RAM speed. I imagine this has all be done for me as well. To be fair, it should be done for you surely as well. XMP enabled. If not, obviously turn it on yourself. 6000 megahertz RAM, so pretty much the sweet spot really when it comes to price to performance. And again, 32 gig on this, 64 if you go for the 4090. It looks as if there are 2 bits of software for it. You've got this Corsair One dashboard and then the Corsair diagnostics tool. Hopefully you won't need to use that one, but it's there if you need it. But it tells you your coolant temp for both the CPU and the GPU, so 17 and 15 degrees because we've just turned it on. You can, of course, customize RGB and things in here. But let's cut out all of the guff where I installed all of the games, had a nice lunch with some Italian meat, some pesto. Oh, it was lovely. Homemade bread too. And actually jump into the games themselves. And we're going to start with some Hogwarts Legacy. So what you're seeing here is, of course, running on that 4080 Super. This is 4K Ultra settings, the way I would personally choose to play, with DLSS set to balance, because on this 4K screen, I think this is the perfect blend really between visual quality and performance. And I mean, you really can't argue with the frame rate here. I mean, we're getting around about 120 frames a second or so, which for a very demanding game is excellent, especially as this is one of those titles that is actually pretty hard on the CPU as well. I mean, in terms of utilization, what are we doing? Well, not that hard on the CPU, 14%, but don't forget, of course, the single core performance isn't measured by the overall usage, but the GPU is running flat out with around about 98%, 99% utilization. So there is going to be a little bit of stutter here and there. This is not the best optimized game in the world, unfortunately, but it's a very good looking one and it is running well. But let's talk about thermals, because the GPU is pretty much perfect, right? No issues with this. I mean, in terms of like VRM temperatures and things like that, as I say, we obviously haven't looked at that. But in terms of the GPU die itself, 54 degrees when running flat out. I mean, how many of you watching this can actually say that your PC gets lower than this? But where things are not quite so good are actually with the CPU, because at the moment it's around about 65 degrees, which is great. I mean, no issues with that. If this you're just using this for gaming and you're getting 65 degrees, perfect. The problem is that it's making a lot of noise. Like, a lot of noise, and this is in its default configuration. So the fact that we're getting 65 degrees and making a lot of noise, to me that means it's not set up, at least not set up the way I would want it, because I would much rather that the CPU was running at, say, 80 degrees, but we didn't have any noise at all. So I know we will be able to tweak this, but the fact that it doesn't look like you can do it in the Corsair software straight out the box is pretty annoying. So I think they should have definitely tuned this more to actually allow for a quieter system, because a Mac, this is not. So we're at 100% load, and the temperature is fluctuating between about 76 and 86 degrees. So if you had this running for a long time, and obviously you're in a warmer place, like somewhere in the States, lucky you, then yes, obviously this is going to get a little bit on the warm side. I don't necessarily have a problem with it running at 86 degrees, but it's such a powerful CPU. I just think more could have been done really here, especially in the size and form factor that we have, just to give ourselves some better thermals. So in terms of the CPU cooling, I've got to admit, I am a bit disappointed. Ah, right, we're getting somewhere. I've found it. It's under the advanced CPU configuration. And yes, here we have our long duration power limit, and that is indeed set to 200 watts. Short is set to 240. So changing these values and increasing them would mean you could put more power into your CPU, and obviously would give you more performance, but at the cost of more heat. For some reason though, it is actually grey and disabled, and I'm not sure if that's because it's a B series motherboard or whether there's something else that I have to change. Right, okay, future markers here. As if by magic, I come bearing some information from Corsair. And essentially, whilst this is, you know, you're off your shelf MSI motherboard, they have actually got a custom Corsair BIOS on this, so you can't just update it to something else. Essentially, the idea is that they've tuned it all for the Corsair One, and it's kind of like what you get is what you get. So there's still settings in the BIOS and stuff, as you saw, you can change, but the fan speed isn't one of them, it seems, and yeah, power limits isn't another one. So a little bit annoying, but just to prove a point here that I think we can make this better really easily, I've grabbed the thickest fan I have. This is a Fantex T30, and I'm going to whack it on here and plug it into the motherboard. And if you haven't already guessed, I am pretty annoyed about this, because the logic, it just doesn't make sense. Like, I understand why they've gone for the i9, because like it or loathe it, Intel pretty much has the best recognition for like high quality CPUs. So for the audience of this, I think a lot of people would want to go for Intel. Plus, obviously, whilst you could go for a 7800X3D, that would probably make an all-round better gaming system, and obviously it would produce less heat, would make more sense here. That is only an 8-core, and they want this to be for productivity as well. You know, I can understand all of that, but then having one slim 120mm fan on a 120 rad for what is one of the hottest CPUs you can get, bar like the KS. It's bizarre. You've got all of this room, as I will now prove. Like, it would have been an easy thing, surely, to get better. Right, let's see. Moment of truth. Will this still fit in? Yes, with loads of room. You can fit a thick fan on this. Why have you put a thin one? Am I the one that's insane here? More so than usual. So let's have a look then. What are we getting? Around about 78 degrees, between 72 and 80, whereas before I'm fairly sure we're at about 82 fairly consistently. So for all intents and purposes, there's no harm in adding an extra fan. It doesn't like turn it night and day difference. So clearly Corsair aren't mad by going for one single fan, but the fact remains, you've got the space here, I think, for a 240 rad, or at least could have designed that in. So if you've gone for a 240 rad and you clearly got that thickness there available for thicker fans on the underside, maybe put like one of those cages on the back if you're worried about cables or something like that, there's definitely more that could have been done on the CPU side. But as promised, that is enough about fan tuning, and now let's be a fan of Call of Duty. And now that we have hit the ground running, let's have a look. I mean, this is running at 4K, so definitely room to sort of turn this down if you want a little bit more performance, but we're still getting around about 125 FPS. DLSS is also set to quality, so again, change this down to performance, you will of course go at more performance. But this is often a game that can get CPU bottlenecked when you sort of get to around about the 200 FPS mark or so we're not going to worry about that, but we are definitely utilizing that CPU, and the temperature is around about 69, 73 degrees. But again, remember this is with that extra fan in there. In terms of power on that CPU as well, about 150 watts or so, 152 watts. Come on, come on, come on, come on! How has he done it? Whilst he's doing the noise test, that is phenomenal. Go me. Let's finish our gaming test by lowering this down to 1440p. And as you can see, that has an absolutely massive increase to the FPS. Remember when I said the bottlenecking for the CPU is going to be around about 200 FPS? Well, this is pretty much that point, right? We're now at about 210 FPS, but the GPU utilization is still at 99%. So if there is some CPU bottlenecking, it's only going to happen at certain points. You're not going to be limited all of the time. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hang on a second there, guys. This is Future Markers here with an update, because for better or worse, I had a dodgy unit, right? Essentially, what Corsair told me is that when they actually looked into my fan speeds, this thing was ramping up too much, which meant that the problems I was having, where it would actually make too much noise in not idle, but like light load situations, the fans would pretty much go not quite nuts, but way too loud. And obviously there was no way of changing this, but Corsair told me this was a pre-production unit. It had the wrong fan profiles on, and they were actually able to flash it remotely, and now it performs like it should. Great. I want to say that while this has sort of changed my opinion on like it being used as a normal computer, it still doesn't fundamentally change the fact that this needs better cooling for the CPU, because obviously if you're limited to 200 watts, which is still a lot, but it's not like the full beans, if you like, that you can get from a 14900K, you are still going to get that compromise. But I'm glad at least that Corsair have fixed my unit, but this of course does reveal, if you like, that clearly there is a way, or maybe in the future there'll be a way that you can actually control the fan profiles and curves yourself, because it has actually increased the temperatures ever so slightly, but it has made it quieter as well. So why can't you give you guys the choice to do that? Having some basic fan profiles would be nice, right? You get it on gaming laptops. Why can't you get it on a gaming PC? So still pretty quiet. I mean, remember this is a sort of desk PC, right? It's going to sit here. Personally, I'd rather my CPU maxed out in the 80s than the 90s. Especially bear in mind this is brand new. Once it sort of fills up with some dust, temperatures might get a little bit higher than that. I've now let our PC warm up for around about 10 minutes or so, and this is your gaming audio test. So definitely not the worst I've heard. It compares well versus a gaming laptop, but this is still pretty loud. And I mean, to be fair, if you then got fantastic thermals, I think I could forgive this. But it's just not really the case. I mean, okay, I know we've been running Cinebench, but that was around about 15 minutes ago, and our CPU is still hitting around about 80 to 90 degrees. I don't want my chip to be running this hot when you're not fully using it. I mean, okay, I know we're still getting around about 140 watts of utilization, but this again just says, why have we gone for such insufficient cooling on the CPU, or used a chip that's just not really appropriate for the level of cooling? Why not put a Ryzen 7800 X3D in this, and then you wouldn't have to worry? Honestly, the whole thing is just so frustrating. I know I've said it how many times in this video, but either get the cooling right or choose a different chip. It's not that difficult, and I'm afraid to say I hadn't done too much research deliberately on the price until this point. And when I've seen what you can build for, or at least how much it would cost to build something very similar to this yourself, I'm afraid it doesn't do the Corsair One any favours. Obviously you do have to build it yourself, but if I told you that you could have that with a 7800X 3D and a B-series Ryzen board for £2,175 rather than the £3,500 Corsair are charging for this, would that change your opinion on the device? Because to me, it does. Because if it was at a slightly lower price, probably around about the £3,000 mark, and had better cooling, then I think it would actually be fairly easy to recommend if you wanted a pre-built system, because not everyone is going to build it yourself. You can't just make that comparison and then, you know, oh, you've got to spend more money for someone to build it yourself. Obviously, we know that, that's fine. But I think this is just a compromise or two too far to avidly recommend. I was going to say to everyone, but to be honest, unless you're a very specific person and you don't mind the fact that the cooling on this is insufficient, in my opinion, for such a hot chip, I think you're going to want to look elsewhere, which is a shame because otherwise I really like it. I think it's been very well designed for such a small case, which is really quite frustrating, but we can put our own fan in it and improve it. Or, you know, if they'd gone for a thicker radiator and a thicker fan, I think it would have made a big difference. It's a shame. But there we are. Let me know your thoughts on this though down in the comment section below. Smash this like button if you've enjoyed it, and of course get subscribed for more videos just like this. And if you are interested in current pricing, I will leave links to this down below alongside all of the links for that alternative build. And while you're down there, why not give your PC a makeover with Deepcool's new Mystique all-in-one. This incredible cooler is ideal for both Intel and AMD CPUs and pairs stunning looks with powerhouse performance. Deepcool's new pump can run under 21 dB for near silent operation, and paired with their newly redesigned copper cold plate, heat transfer is even more efficient. So get your GIFs and your GIFs ready, there's a screen coming to a cooler near you. Learn more today with the link down below. But thank you so much for watching, we'll catch you in the next one.